The Punic Wars, the mistakes that destroyed Carthage. The downfall of Carthage in the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BCE, is one of the most tragic and decisive moments in ancient history. Despite being one of the most powerful and wealthy cities of the Mediterranean, Carthage's failure to adapt, poor political decisions, and strategic miscalculations led to its eventual destruction at the hands of Rome. While Carthage showed flashes of brilliance, particularly under the leadership of Hannibal, its long-term survival was undermined by a series of fatal mistakes across all three Punic Wars. This analysis explores the key mistakes that contributed to Carthage's defeat and ultimate annihilation in the Third Punic War. 1. The failure to maintain naval superiority in the First Punic War. At the beginning of the First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, Carthage had an overwhelming advantage at sea. Its navy was the strongest in the Mediterranean, while Rome had little to no naval experience. However, Carthage failed to capitalize on this advantage, which led to disastrous consequences. Key mistakes. Underestimating Rome's naval ambition. Carthage underestimated Rome's determination to build a navy from scratch. Rome's rapid naval development and the invention of the corvus, a boarding device that allowed Roman soldiers to engage in hand-to-hand combat on enemy ships, neutralized Carthage's superior seamanship. Lack of naval innovation. While Rome adapted quickly and innovated with the corvus, Carthage relied too heavily on traditional naval tactics. Carthage failed to develop new strategies to counter Rome's evolving naval capabilities. Defeat at the Battle of the Aegates Islands, 241 BCE, the final blow in the First Punic War came at the Battle of the Aegates Islands, where the Roman fleet decisively defeated Carthage's navy. This defeat forced Carthage to sue for peace, cede Sicily to Rome, and pay a massive indemnity, leading to a significant loss of resources and territory. Impact. The First Punic War marked the beginning of Carthage's decline. Losing Sicily weakened Carthage's influence in the Mediterranean and strained its economy. Additionally, the loss of naval dominance was a critical blow to a city-state that had relied on maritime power for centuries. Carthage's inability to maintain control over the seas allowed Rome to expand its influence across the Mediterranean, setting the stage for future conflicts. 2. Carthage's political and strategic failures in the Second Punic War. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, is famous for the brilliance of Hannibal Barca, who nearly brought Rome to its knees. However, despite Hannibal's military genius, Carthage's strategic and political failures ultimately led to its defeat. Key mistakes. Failure to support Hannibal's campaign. Despite Hannibal's victories in Italy, including the legendary Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, Carthage's ruling elite failed to provide him with adequate reinforcements and supplies. Hannibal fought for over a decade in Italy without the resources needed to deliver a decisive blow to Rome. This lack of support forced Hannibal into a war of attrition, which he could not sustain. Lack of strategic coordination. Carthage's inability to coordinate its efforts across multiple theaters of war was a major strategic blunder. While Hannibal campaigned in Italy, Carthage lost control of Spain, a critical source of manpower and resources. Scipio Africanus's victories in Spain deprived Hannibal of much-needed reinforcements and set the stage for the Roman invasion of North Africa. Strategic overreach. Hannibal's decision to march on Italy, while bold and initially successful, ultimately overstretched Carthage's capabilities. Without naval superiority and logistical support, Hannibal was unable to force Rome into a peace settlement. Meanwhile, Rome adapted by avoiding direct confrontations with Hannibal and attacking Carthage's interests abroad. Defeat at the Battle of Zama, 202 BCE, the final mistake of the Second Punic War came when Hannibal was recalled to defend Carthage from Scipio's invasion of North Africa. At the Battle of Zama, Hannibal suffered a decisive defeat due to Scipio's superior tactics and his alliance with Masiniss's Numidian cavalry. This defeat marked the end of the Second Punic War and led to another harsh peace treaty for Carthage. Impact. The Second Punic War resulted in Carthage's further decline as a major power. Carthage lost its territories in Spain, was forced to disband its navy, and had to pay another massive indemnity to Rome. While Hannibal's leadership delayed Rome's victory, Carthage's internal political disunity and failure to support its best commander ensured its eventual defeat. After the war, Carthage was reduced to a client state of Rome, stripped of much of its military and economic power. 3. Economic recovery and Rome's growing hostility leading to the Third Punic War. After the Second Punic War, Carthage managed to recover economically. Its trade and agricultural sectors began to thrive again, alarming many Roman leaders who feared that Carthage might regain its former strength. Among these leaders was Cato the Elder, who famously declared, "Carthago delenda est," Carthage must be destroyed. At the end of every speech in the Senate, he mistakes. Failure to acknowledge Rome's intentions. Carthage failed to recognize the growing threat from Rome, which viewed Carthage's economic recovery with suspicion. Instead of seeking to placate Rome, Carthage continued to build its economy, which made Roman leaders like Cato increasingly hostile. Violation of the peace treaty. Carthage's decision to defend itself against the Numidian incursions without Rome's permission, in violation of the peace treaty, gave Rome the pretext it needed to declare war. This strategic blunder led directly to the outbreak of the Third Punic War in 149 BCE. Impact. Carthage's failure to understand the existential threat posed by Rome and its mismanagement of the conflict with Numidia triggered the Third Punic War. By this time, Carthage had lost most of its military capability and was no longer in a position to challenge Rome effectively. This set the stage for the final and most destructive phase of the Punic Wars. 4. The siege and destruction of Carthage in the Third Punic War. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, was the shortest of the three conflicts but resulted in the total destruction of Carthage. Despite Carthage's valiant defense, its fate was sealed from the moment Rome declared war. Key mistakes. Unprepared for total war. By the time of the Third Punic War, Carthage had been disarmed and was no longer a military power capable of resisting Rome. When war broke out, Carthage's leaders were unprepared for the scale of the Roman attack and had little chance of defending their city against a determined Roman assault. Failure to secure alliances. Unlike earlier conflicts, Carthage was almost entirely isolated in the Third Punic War. Rome had secured alliances with most of the other major powers in the Mediterranean, and Carthage had no significant allies to call upon for help. Its reliance on its own limited resources left the city vulnerable. The fall of Carthage, 146 BCE, after a brutal 3-year siege, Roman forces under Scipio Aemilianus breached the walls of Carthage and systematically destroyed the city. The Roman army slaughtered many of the inhabitants and sold the survivors into slavery. Carthage was razed to the ground, and its territory was annexed as the Roman province of Africa. Impact. The destruction of Carthage marked the end of one of the greatest city-states of the ancient world. Carthage's failure to recognize the severity of Rome's intentions and its lack of military preparedness led to its complete annihilation. The fall of Carthage was not only a military defeat, but also a symbol of Rome's ruthless determination to eliminate any potential rival to its dominance in the Mediterranean. Conclusion. A legacy of missteps and missed opportunities. Carthage's destruction in the Punic Wars was the result of a series of strategic miscalculations and political failures that compounded over the course of the three conflicts. From the failure to maintain naval superiority in the First Punic War, to the lack of support for Hannibal during the Second Punic War, and the mismanagement of diplomacy with Rome in the lead-up to the Third Punic War, Carthage's leadership made critical errors that sealed its fate. In contrast, Rome demonstrated an ability to learn from its mistakes, adapt its strategies, and build long-term plans for domination. While Carthage had moments of brilliance, particularly under Hannibal, it ultimately failed to match Rome's military, political, and strategic resilience. The destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE serves as a lasting reminder of the consequences of underestimating an implacable rival and the importance of unity and foresight in warfare.